Here's yours truly, Patriot Glenn Pav.
Welcome to this Friday afternoon, July 12th, already in the middle of July. Time flies when you're having fun, folks. This is the Glenn Pav Show, Writing the Right, R-I-G-H-T-I-N-G, The Right, R-I-G-H-T.com. You can go there, click on Tan Talk, which is our radio affiliate, 1340, 1350, and 1400. Click on that and you can watch and listen live. If you're traveling, drive carefully. We'll be giving you the traffic updates at the bottom of the hour for you as well. If you're listening on the internet, you can watch and listen by going to writingtheright.com and then click on Watch and Listen. You'd like to get the podcast for this show, you can go there tomorrow because we'll upload it tonight after the show, and you'll be able to hear the audio feed, the MP3. You can download it or listen to it live on the internet. Many ways in which you can participate. Writing the Right, bringing our country back to the right of center where our founding fathers were. Where we want to restore America one person, one Christian, one church, one city, one county at a time. I'm not going any farther than the county. That's really something that we can influence in our area here, more so than the state and the federal. Although we're going to be talking about two key issues. One is the federal issue of immigration and amnesty. The other one is light rail here in Pinellas, which will affect all the counties around Tampa Bay as well. We want to revive the Christians, reform the politics, and we want to restore the country. That's writingtheright.com. I want to give you a couple of quotes that are interesting as we come and introduce our guest shortly. And it was told by Henry David Thoreau. Anybody ever hear of him? Of course. That government is best which governs least. I like that. And the government is best which governs not at all. I'm beginning to believe that that's even more important. Thomas Jefferson said this: when wrongs are pressed or pushed on us because it is believed they will be borne, resistance becomes morality. That's powerful, folks. We are in a moral fight right now in our country. And Thomas Jefferson then said the price of freedom is eternal vigilance. These are impactful thoughts and quotes from our founding fathers. We're trying to get back to that. The immigration bill is not getting back to that whatsoever. And I want to introduce to you the star of our show, South Pinellas 912 Tea Party President Barb Hazelden. Barb, welcome to the Glenn Pav Show.
Well, thank you, Glenn. We really appreciate having this invitation today, the chance to talk to everyone.
And we're glad you're here live in the studio, and you brought some of your folks, so why don't you introduce them going around the table.
These people are what makes South Pinellas 912 work. I have today Assistant Organizer Pete Franco, retired Army Major, and John Beeler, and over here Sully Grasso, who is always recording everything that's going on in the county. He's become very feared in Pinellas County because he's videotaping a lot of things in Pinellas County.
Well, we appreciate him and the opportunity we can have all of you here. Thank you for your service, Pete, in the military as well. We're glad to have you here. Immigration bill. Let me share something that Mike Cutler, who is a national person on this subject, said, and then we're going to open it up to you guys to share your thoughts. The fatally flawed legislation known as comprehensive immigration reform should be given a more truthful and descriptive title. I suggest, says Mike Cutler, to have it renamed the Terrorist Assistance and Facilitation Act, because it would have required the inept and incompetent division, the United States Citizenship and Immigration Services, to provide official identity documents to millions of illegals who, in the parlance of the immigration anarchists, are undocumented. This would provide ample opportunities for terrorists to obtain brand new clean identities they could then use to circumvent various no-fly and terror watch lists and embed themselves in the United States, traveling freely and legally, working in jobs that might have critical infrastructure implications or national security implications. There are many people bringing their 2 cents in on this, and we're going to put our penny in it today here on the Glenn Pav Show, Writing the Right. What are your thoughts as we start introducing this immigration disaster? As we know, the Senate already passed it, but then it's now being considered in the House. Guys?
This is Pete speaking. Well, to begin with, the issue with respect to immigration that I think is the most critical is to secure the borders.
Absolutely.
And this bill doesn't, it does that in a weak way, but the main thing that it does is it really turns it, it's an amnesty bill similar to the one that got done way back when Reagan was in. And it basically is the wrong thing for the wrong reasons. Attacking immigration comprehensively, I feel, is absolutely not the way to go. I feel that we should be taking a one-step at a time approach, starting with securing the borders. So comprehensive immigration reform is the wrong way to go. And so the Senate bill is absolutely the wrong thing, and we are hoping that this gets stopped in the House. I've got some more to say about it, but I want to let somebody else speak if they want.
Sure, John, your introductory thoughts.
Yeah. Well, if you step back and just think about how you should look at immigration policy to start with, it shouldn't be determined by emotions, and it shouldn't be determined about how to write a broken law or something like
Right.
that. If you love America, and it stands to reason you want to maintain the culture and the society that produced it. And it's got to be managed so immigrants can assimilate and adopt American ways and customs. And by bringing in thousands upon thousands of immigrants, you create segregated pieces of the country that have no chance to assimilate. They don't become American. And diversity is a good thing for the country, but there are some concepts that are not looked at in the same way in third world countries than there are here. The rule of law comes to mind.
Right.
And so when you start to talk about 10 or 20 or 30, up to 60 million people coming in here within 5 or 10 years, there's no way they can become Americanized. And it's not the soil, it's not the air in America that makes it American, it's an idea. I mean, it's a concept that came across from hundreds of years.
Good, John. First of all, we know that the immigration reform situations right now, the immigration policies are broken. They're not working. You and I in this room and all of the voters did not create this. The government did. The government blew it big time. Boehner already said just recently in the last day or so that he will not consider the Senate bill to look at it for revisions and things like this at this point. Okay, so he's not going to try to massage that. He thinks it's very bad. Let me tell you what James Simpson, who wrote about this in WorldNet Daily, said this week, and maybe get your comments on it, okay, guys? The U.S. Senate's Gang of Eight immigration reform plan, as well as strikingly similar plan now being backed by Representative Paul Ryan of Wisconsin and a bipartisan House gang, both offer the roadmap to citizenship. Originally conceived, carefully developed, listen to this, folks, and good listeners, hold on to your wheel, your steering wheel. Originally developed by members of the Communist Party, USA, working within the Democratic Party and the radical left activist network for the purpose of using amnestied illegals to build a permanent progressive majority. Now that's why they're trying to get it across, the progressives, the liberals, and so forth. It defies me that we don't have enough guts in the Republican Party, basically, to see that and realize that by going through with this, with the pork that was in it, and so forth from the Senate bill, and the debacle that it would be, and as John brought out, the millions and millions of people coming in on a broken system and to try to make it better. The word comprehensive is already a problem. It's too big. It's too pork-filled. We need to do one thing at a time, as Pete said. Build up the border first. And my question to you is this, and John, you can comment. My question to you is this. Well, let's take the monies that we were going to put toward this, millions and millions of dollars toward making this bill a law and putting all the people in place, and deporting the 11 million people. We could find them, we can get them and get them out, and then build the borders as soon as possible. John, your thoughts?
Well, I don't even think you need to do that. I mean, they'll either work their way in or you can get them out. But in 2006, there was legislation passed to build a fence. We never funded it. We never built it.
Right.
And
This
is a step-by-step process. They built about 12 miles, I believe. This is a step-by-step process. And in the new immigration bill, they talk up the border security standards, but there are none. And when you pass the bill, what's going to happen? The president's already showed that he will only implement the parts of the law that he wants.
Exactly.
So if the first thing to do is secure the borders so you don't have a glut more coming in.
Right.
And so just go ahead and complete the 2006 fence, and then talk about further changes in the immigration system.
Now, John, there's more than just 700 miles. You know how many miles there are in the whole thing?
It's 3,000 miles.
It's 1,959 miles all the way across, but we can't even get 700 done. They won't follow that. So if we can have one bill, not a comprehensive one bill, secure the border all the way across and do that. We do that.
But you can't dare even have even a sentence, because if this House puts forth a bill, they're gonna put it in conference, and then it will become the Senate bill.
Yeah.
So the message that I think that we have to continue to pound home to the House is no, only good bill is no bill.
That's right. We have to start with no bill. I think
No
that's the
bill.
foundation that we all agree on, right?
Yes.
Start with
Yeah.
no bill from the Senate or the House. Start from scratch and secure the border first, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Well, that and I think mandatory E-Verify.
Yes, that's-
You know, incremental. I think that if we haven't learned by now what comprehensive changes mean, like with our healthcare, you know, and of course we're all devastated that Marco Rubio has been the spearhead of this entire immigration reform, because here we have now another 1,100-page bill that there's been all kinds of deals made and behind closed doors in order to get people's support to get it past the Senate, and you know, there are just incremental changes, just like with healthcare. We did not need comprehensive healthcare. We needed incremental changes.
Right.
Now we can see that healthcare, obviously, they just said doing a delay on the implementation of group plans. They're trying to do the 1-year delay now on individual mandates because it's hitting the wall. And these immigration, if we do this, it's going to be the similar scenario, that this comprehensive, like you said, comprehensive reform. We don't need comprehensive reform of our basic programs in our
Right,
country.
right.
This is nothing more than trying to completely change the makeup of our to socialism.
Yeah, exactly. With the illegal aliens coming in, it will be all mostly Democratic. They'll be under government. Here's another thing that we can do, and say no to the full comprehensive immigration bill in both House and Senate. But another thing that we can do is not give any aid whatsoever to illegals, okay? And then ship out the ones that are illegal, you know, and so that they don't come back, and put up the walls as soon as we can. You know, no aid to them, because we're giving them aid that our legals aren't getting. And who's paying for it? 100 million people of us are paying for that right now.
Well,
Barb?
I'd just like to say that I don't know, Glenn, that shipping them out, so to speak, is a realistic strategy that's going to work. If you do E-Verify, and they have to prove that they're legal in order to get work, they will
That's
probably
part of this.
self-deport.
Yes,
Because
that's
if-
part of it, I think.
Yes,
Part of
I
the
think
shipping
that,
out is
but
what I
that
mean.
way we don't have to ship them out, because they'll solve their own problem.
Yes,
Now, as far as the people who are here illegal, you know who Phyllis Shafley is?
yes.
She had a conference call yesterday with Eagle Forum, and I just wanted to say that she made an excellent point. For these people who are here illegally, they want this border closed too. They're not gonna want the competition of another
Right.
20 million people come
That's right.
pouring over the border if they do this immigration, and being competition to them and causing these wages to go down to just slave
Yeah,
labor.
yeah, right.
They, you know, so I think that the illegals also here want the border closed. It's
Yeah.
for their benefit too.
Good, Barb. John?
Yeah, on a related thing there, when I was overseas, I worked for a couple of the big three contractors in Iraq and Afghanistan, and when I first got there in 2005, it was mostly Americans that staffed. A couple of years later, it was Balkans. Well, it's because Balkans were cheaper, and then a couple of years later, they were moving to Indians and Filipinos, which is cheaper. It's the main thing. The ally that the Democrats have are the crony capitalists that want cheap labor in the country.
Right.
So they bring all these people in. There's no reason to bring all these people in when we have unemployment. U6 is up to 15 to 20%. So all it's going to do is depress the wages and give the corporatists cheaper labor.
Right. The corporatists are for this, and that's why on the Republican and the progressive Republican side as well, the corporatists are trying to get this across so they can have this, and also they can hire these illegals and don't have to pay Obamacare. You know? What do you think, Pete?
Exactly right, and I think it's a good point that John made and that you made, Glenn, about where's it coming from? So the Democrats want this because they want a permanent voting bloc that to put these people progressive, and I'll assert, put them into an entitlement community, which this immigration bill, the Senate one at least, absolutely does. Okay, it allows for entitlements to go, no matter what they're saying. And on the right, or on the as far as the kind of the crony capitalism part from some, the narrative is that they need to have these illegals come in to do work that Americans won't do, and I would assert that that's not true, and I'd assert that it's a narrative that keeps people small, and it's not the way to look at it. If they want to look at making business more conducive, look at jockeying or working to do what they need to do through legislation to loosen up the regulations that are on. So I think on business. So I think looking at where these are coming from are important, as you pointed out before, Glenn.
Yeah. We're talking here with the South Pinellas County 912 group and their website for Barb Hazelton. Tell us the website.
Yes, thank you. It's 912pinellas.org.
Okay.
So it's very simple, 912pinellas.org.
There you go, folks.
Yeah.
And you can learn more about Barb Hazelton. And also we've got here Pete Franco, one of the coordinators, and Jon Beeler as well. And we're excited to be able to be a part of this, to discuss this, because, we've got many good ideas. Unfortunately, we don't know why these bad ideas are coming through the Senate, except the Senate is Democratic. It's the Republicans in the House that got to stop this. And we've called in, we are encouraging people to call in, aren't we, to call in to their representative and say, no immigration bill whatsoever, at all. Call in. You can call in. We've got Bill Young here. We've got several others too. Do you know the other ones in our area here? Have you looked into those?
Two of the key people are,
Yes.
of course, Bill Young for Pinellas, also Gus Bill Rackus.
Yes.
And you could look them up, but Bill Young's number is 202-225-5961, and Gus Bill Rackus local is 813-501-4942. We'll try to make them available on our sites, but calling them and letting them know that it's critical that no bill of any kind go through the House, because anything that goes into conference with the Senate will be squashed into an amnesty bill, as Obamacare was.
Exactly. John?
Call and write every day, too. Don't just do it once.
I've
Every
called
day.
in several times as myself and said this is the second time. I called in as a radio announcer. I called in as an individual voter for Bill Young and so forth.
And call all their offices.
Yes, there are local offices here in Pinellas County, for example, and Hillsborough County, other counties that Bill Arrakis is involved in as well. It's important that we do this, folks. Do you understand? If you don't understand, give us a call at 727-441-3000. That's 727-441-3000. And we will get you enlightened by our group here who have studied this immensely. A lot of people have studied this and see the flaws along the way and the lies that they're trying to bring out. Our greatest disappointment, Marco Rubio heading this up on our side. We helped him get into office here. We've been working here for a long time to get him to take the Senate seat here. What kind of thoughts do you have? He's a total disappointment to me, and I'm not going to support him pretty much because his ideology seems to be tainted now as well. John?
Yeah, I've seen a lot of good people go to Washington, and they're good people, and
Yes.
they go native sooner or later. He just did it so much sooner than anyone expected.
Unfortunately.
And it's really too bad, because it was a total about face. And now you'll notice that he's trying to get back on the good side of the traditional Americans by introducing an abortion bill and, doing a little dance with that kind of stuff. But I don't know. For myself, it's not going to fly.
I heard the other night, I'll give a little plug to Rumsfeld, but he said, trust rides out on horseback and comes back on foot.
Mm.
I love that. and certainly everyone sitting around this table, we worked very hard to get Marco Rubio elected, and
Yes.
he rode out on horseback, and
Yeah.
I don't think we're going to be able to trust him again.
Well, I can't for now, that's for sure. I don't have any secure in that way in the Senate area as well, but that's why we've got to get properly conservative elected senators and House Republicans in. Here are the 5 lies of the Rubio, I call it the Rubio amnesty bill that has been put up on the websites all over the country. Border security, he said, was the first thing, and it's actually legalization is the first thing. They want to legalize these illegals. And by the way, they have committed illegal acts. If you and I commit the same illegal act, we're paying the fine, we're paying the prison term, and so forth. They, through this, will be released from any crime that they're taking. Here's another one. 90% border security. That's a big lie. We already know, as John brought out, that they haven't even built the 700 miles, let alone, and by the way, Napolitano said a little while ago, well, most of that 700 is finished. 5 miles is what we calculated so far. Unbelievable. Another lie. The fines imposed lie. Again, the fines allegedly imposed by the Rubio amnesty bill are left to the discretion of the Department of Homeland Security. Everything is not cut and dry, is it, in this amnesty bill and the Senate bill and things like that. It's to the discretion of the leaders, and so forth. And one of the union groups, the biggest union in this, is ICE, which is the immigration border group. They're totally against the comprehensive immigration bill. Some of your thoughts?
Well, I think that the president of the ICE union even tried to speak to Rubio.
Yes.
And I mean, he has done everything he can to say this is going to be a disaster.
Yes.
It's just amazing when you get into the details with the bill to think that Marco Rubio supported not just the general idea, but there is so much in the weeds in this bill that is so typical of Obamacare, the same types of tactics, and that he supported it is just heartbreaking.
Yes, with some of the information in that bill, as you know from the Obamacare, there are so many extra things in the stimulus package as well that was funding other things that had nothing to do with the stimulus nor Obamacare, and the same thing is happening in this bill from the Senate, and we hope the House won't do it. Pete first, then John. We got about a minute.
Okay. And just to point out one thing, that no one here that I know is against immigration. It's
Right.
illegal immigration
That's
that
right.
we're against. And the concept of this bill giving amnesty to people, who have been here illegally ahead of people who are waiting online the right way. And there's multiple sources. If you want to check some more of this stuff out to go into the weeds, Heritage is a good source. Red State's a good source. A couple of the border security immigration sites, CIS, FAIR, Numbers for USA. I've got a list here of some talking points, but our time is short here. But we can make some of those available on our site.
Go ahead, John.
As far as the border security goes, John Cornyn offered an amendment to gauge the border security where it had to be 90% apprehension rate, and they shut that down quickly. They don't want to do any checks, and they don't want to do any border
that's right.
security. So
they're not going to enforce this like they haven't enforced the original ones from 86, 96, 106, or whatever we're talking about here. They're not going to enforce it. We're talking here with the South Pinellas 912 Tea Party, President Barb Hazelton, and along with all of her cohorts here, we've got Pete Franco and John Beeler, and we also have Sully Grasso doing some of the video here. We appreciate him. And you can go to their website,
912pinellas.org.
and learn a lot more. We're here on the Glenn Pav Show. We're going to come back, talk about a very controversial and another strong arm idea that some people are doing about light rail. We've already kiboshed the high-speed rail from Tampa to Orlando, but this light rail is even a worse scenario, and we're going to hear from some of the people who are for it too, and that are on the air with us right after the important messages here. Your traffic as well on the Glenn Pav Show, Riding the Right. We'll be right back after this. All righty, keep the change, Mr. Obama, because we've got to go back to where we were. You know, some of the things that President Obama and his group want to transform America, there was no need to transform. We were doing pretty well with our own health care program, and basically what they're trying to do is not help the ones that don't have insurance. Basically, it's not that they want to help 11 million people in illegal aliens. They want to control us. They want to make them dependent upon the government and the government health care and the government amnesty program. That's what his angle is. But we here in the Tea Party groups like South Pinellas Patriots, South Pinellas 912 with Barb Hazelton and her group here are out there philanthropically trying to help other people in need. and I want you to share a little bit about the Clark family with us.
Oh, thank you. Well, this is a great opportunity to talk with folks about this. One of our members, Kathy Chamberlain, who is a private contractor, a lady who does home remodeling, she stumbled across this young family. And Richard is a young man in his 30s, I believe, who did multiple tours overseas, and on his last tour was struck by an IED, I believe it is, and he was severely injured. He came back after months and months, I guess, of rehab, like a year. And by the time he came back, his young family had kind of fallen apart, and his children were all in different foster homes.
Sad.
And he was able, through a long process, to get all of his children back. The wife was gone, and he ended up, living in a very low-income mobile home park in St. Petersburg. Is when Kathy met them, and they were struggling. 3 little girls under the age of 7.
Yes.
And he was doing everything he could to hold it together. Long story short, Glenn, is that through Kathy contacting us, and we started sending the information out, he needed a car. One of our members helped him get in touch with Veterans Village over in St. Petersburg, moved him out of the very dangerous mobile home park situation with 3 little girls, and moved them to Veterans Village, where they just settled in 2 weeks ago. And over the last couple of 3 weeks, $6,000 have been raised, and they're going to buy a car tomorrow at the auction.
All right.
And we had one lady who donated $1,000 last night from Linda Green from our group, in memory of her husband Graham, who passed away in December. So anyway, if you want to help, you can go to www.gofundme.com/Clark-Bartlett.
And if folks, I've already put it on my Facebook, facebook.com/GlennPav, and it's there for you folks. You can go to gofundme.com/Clark-Bartlett. Help this family out as best you can. We appreciate his service to our country, and we want his family to be restored as well. And this is what the Tea Party does. This is the philanthropic ideas. This is the giving that we have. When we hear of a need, we're there to try to make common sense of it and try to help and support. So we appreciate South Pinellas 912 and the others who have helped here. So go to that Facebook and find out more information, and go right to that gofundme.com.
Thank you.
All righty. We're going to continue on with a topic that has been around for a little while. It's called light rail. And folks, one of the things that we had talked about in the initial defeat of it, trying to defeat this thing, was we don't have enough bus riders as it is all throughout our cities here in the Pinellas County area. So why are we going with a humongous extra thing? PSTA is going broke, etc. And so they came back with a retort. I want to play that retort right now. And this is, tell us who this is. Set this up.
I believe that you're going to be playing a gentleman, Bob Lasher, who is a public relation man for PSTA. And we had been, one of our messaging was all of the empty buses around town.
Yes.
And I think everyone realizes that the buses keep getting longer and with blacker windows. Have you noticed that?
Yes. Nobody can see in to find out the little
you can't see
usage.
the fact that they're empty.
Yeah.
And so they made this video as pushing back on our concern about the empty buses when they want to.
Okay, here's that one, and then we're going to tear this apart and all the reasoning. So everybody, take note. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Bob Lasher, Manager of Community Relations here at PSTA, and one of the comments I've gotten an awful lot over the years has to deal with PSTA always running empty buses, or buses that have only 2 people on them. I can assure you, you don't carry more than 14 million people a year on empty buses. But like most other transit and transportation agencies, there are portions of the routes and times of the day when the buses have less than a full load. It's not really different from trains, from planes, cruise ships, or roads. We're at Drew Street, McMullen Booth Road. 2 very busy roads in Pinellas County. But by 9 o'clock tonight, they'll be pretty much empty, and they'll stay that way until the morning rush hour. And our bus system works pretty much the same way. This is the very end of the Route 60. It runs east to west along Gulf to Bay in Clearwater. When the buses come by here 40 times a day, there's usually nobody on them. The bus makes its turnaround, and hundreds of drivers are going by looking at an empty bus. But what those drivers don't know is that within a mile and a half, once it goes by Clearwater Mall, most of those seats are going to be full. Another question we hear frequently is, why doesn't PSTA run smaller buses during the middle of the day when ridership is lower? There are many reasons for this, not the least of which is the fact that it would involve massive amounts of money to add a fleet of smaller buses. Plus, the federal government strictly limits the number of spare buses a transit agency can have to ensure it doesn't overspend on excess buses. Because of financial and federal limitations, PSTA must invest in buses that are large enough to run on any route and still accommodate rush hour crowds. Additionally, PSTA would have to hire many more drivers to take the smaller buses to and from the routes, while others bring the larger ones back to the yard. And since our maintenance department already runs 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, PSTA would have to hire more mechanics to take care of the additional vehicles. Bottom line, running smaller buses at midday would involve massive increases in PSTA's capital and operational budgets, which we don't have, and it would put the agency in violation of federal regulations. So next time you see a bus that's empty, please don't assume that no one rides. Far from it. In fact, for Pinellas County's population, PSTA is a very undersized transit agency. Yet in 2012, we provided more than 14 million rides. That's pretty impressive when you consider that we only run about 150 buses during weekday rush hour.
All right, that's some of the thoughts on their part, trying to defend having a low bus population and usage. 14 million rides. You know what 14 million rides really means? It means that if I go on 3 times one way and 3 times the other way, that's 6 rides. So it's really not 14 million passengers. It's maybe a third of that, at least a third of that, because of the transfers that come. So false information about 14 million rides in the process. The second thing I want to bring up, and I want you to comment, raise your hand when you're ready, a massive extra money for having these smaller buses here. Actually, the massive extra money in light rail is geometrically huge compared to just a little bit of extra money for having these smaller buses take the long routes along the way. Federal government limits overspending. Isn't that ironic? He says, because of that, we can't spend enough to get these smaller excursion buses here because the federal government says we cannot overspend. Yeah, since when? And the second thing about that is because they are getting money from the federal government, that's the problem. We ought to have made the PSTA an independent group, not government subsidized completely on this. If it was the free market system, we would have had this solved. PSTA would not be going bankrupt as it is right now. More drivers needed? Go ahead and hire the drivers. We need the jobs. Maintenance department, extra cost there, fine, but the extra costs are so minuscule compared to the cost of having a situation where we're buying this light rail, which is millions and millions of extra dollars. You have here a ridership study here as well. Any comments on that?
Well, I'm just listening to you, and it's just wonderful. No, it's just wonderful to listen to you because more and more people, as this discussion progresses obviously forward in our county, people are getting involved. They're getting engaged.
That's right.
And the I think that it sounds like, doesn't it sound like comprehensive transportation reform?
Oh, that word, comprehensive.
Yeah,
it's
not enough just to buy a few small buses to shore up the midday. No, we have to have a comprehensive transportation change.
Right.
And it's going to include a light rail system going from downtown St. Petersburg to downtown Clearwater that's going to take like an hour to make that trip.
Yes.
And they're expecting that people are going to park their car in Pinellas
Yes.
to get up to Clearwater. And you make such great points. But the fact is that the reason that we see empty buses is because there are 40 routes right now at PSTA. This thing has grown into a monster. I can't even say the word. Behemoth. And because if it were a privately owned company, this would have never happened. They have 40 routes. Now, of those 40 routes, and this is a result of their bus study that they're currently doing, that they have to do in order to get more federal grant money. Glenn, only 5 of these routes are really efficient. and 2 of the trolleys that run up and down the beaches. So as you can see
Yes.
with this chart that I have here, which
Yes.
is their own chart, out of the 40 routes, 7 of these routes account for 60%.
Look at that, folks. Only the ones in dark colors are effectively profitable. Now, if you were the CEO of this PSTA, what would you do with the gray ones?
Exactly. And so what do they want to do? They're operating on reserves. Do you know that? But what they want to do, of course, is they want to get us to pass an additional 1 cent sales tax.
Yes.
This massive 14% sales tax increase
Yes.
on ourselves in Pinellas County so that they can then buy a light rail system. Only the government thinks that something that's broken can be fixed by doubling down.
Yes. Yes, and we've heard this in other unfortunate ideological ways that we've talked about, haven't we? There was a fellow by the name of Jon Sully. I don't know if you've heard of them guys, but concerning the Pinellas Suncoast Transit Authority. He says the Green Light Pinellas plan is not just about light rail, he says. It's about more shelters, late night and morning service, express buses, and more frequency. And our good friend Steve Lang, who is a former member of Patriots Inc., and he's a good member of South Pinellas as well as working here in the local area as a Tea Party band, wrote back to him. Listen to this. He said, Pinellas County does not have the density or density centers to make mass transit work. He says, try New York. Your literature, he says, concerning this literature about the Green Light Pinellas plan, he says, your literature is made up of nonsense. As an architect, and Steve is a professional architect, he says, I can see through the propaganda and the environmental nonsense used to expose false justifications and facts. He continues, your empty argument is reflected in your empty buses. I love that one. If any sort of demand existed between Clearwater and St. Petersburg, and get this, folks, the buses would be trying to cash in on it. Then PSTA would try if there was a demand for it. But since there are no direct nonstop bus routes filling this supposed demand, one can only conclude that there is no demand, which there isn't in the process. Well said. You will never succeed in making any mass transit work in Pinellas County until you look like New York as far as that, which we may never be even to another 100 years. Right now, we are stopping the lens. Next, we will stop light rail. Good job, Steve Lang. Appreciate your letter back to the man. And let's talk about some of the parts to this. You mentioned the funding of this. It's going regional instead of county now. They're trying to take it out of the county commissioners, aren't they?
They're trying.
Their hands, and make it into a regional kind of thing with Hillsborough involved, which means that the county commissioners won't have any kind of authority to make the proper decisions about yes or no or this, and we in the county won't have any say either in this process. Your thoughts?
Right, you're exactly right, Glenn. And the whole regionalization piece comes from the fact that there, as you said, there's not the ridership density. That's why they're trying to manipulate that in certain ways. And so people want their freedom in cars, and they don't want to be in a packed sardine can. And the reason they're going with regionalization is because they want tax from people who aren't really going to be using it, yes. And to put it in that. So it's kind of a manipulation that's really fraudulent.
Yeah, if 3% are using it, guess who's paying for the subsidy? 97% us, once again, us.
When
John?
you're talking around getting around local authority, getting around the voters, help me out with this, guys, because I think it's still on our website, isn't it? Where Brad Miller of the PSTA was giving a talk once, and he said, well, we have to get the voters at one time, but if we do it, if we compose this regional commission, then there's no, we don't need the voters, we don't need the council.
Well, actually,
Isn't that right?
what you're referring to is that, there's been a big push by Senator Latvala. Senator Latvala has been, in the last year, trying to force, really,
Yes.
a merger of
Yes.
PSTA and HART.
This is corporatists that are doing this for the corporate purpose, right, Barb?
Hillsborough area regional transit,
Yeah.
and they have been pushing back. HART has been pushing back. They don't want to merge with PSTA. We have a declining population base in Pinellas. It doesn't make well for grant money with the federal government.
Right.
We just lost a seat, right? Because
Yes.
we have a declining population
Yes.
in Pinellas County.
Yes.
So they're trying to get Hillsborough pulled into this so that the numbers look better.
Yes.
And to get control of the Howard Franklin Bridge. So people, you better be having yourself awake on this, because this is going to change and put us in severe risk of financial ruin down the road.
Absolutely. John?
Is that video still on our website?
Which video is that?
Where Brad says if we do it this way, we don't have to go through the voters, we don't have to go through Pinellas.
I believe that's on our YouTube account. Yeah.
It's on the YouTube. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just one point to make, Glenn, off of Barb's point. The push for this rail is a top-down push.
Yes,
so
it is.
it's being pushed by legislators, mostly progressive, down. It's not a bottom-up. There's enormous amounts of money that are being spent on
Yes.
professional marketers, that the same marketers that got the General Motors contract when Obama was
Tucker
fighting.
Hall.
Yeah, Tucker Hall. And so if it was going to be a real need, it would be people swarming to ask for rail. Instead, it's a top-down approach from both the people like I had just stated, and also groups such as the Sierra Club that are pretty much getting requisitioned by the Democrat Party to come down. But I don't see a true demand for light rail at all.
Right. Folks, you can learn a lot more about this. Go to No Tax for Tracks, okay?
Well, it's rail tax facts.
And that's right. When you put in notaxfortracks.com, it goes to railtaxfacts.com. It's RAIL for, the light rail. Tax, T-A-X, facts.com. And you can find out all these things that we're talking about only 3% ridership, the 7 to 8 cents. It will be the largest sales tax in the state of Florida out of 67 counties. Who wants to come here then and live here and be a part of this and so forth? John?
I want to point out one more thing too. They're going to be throwing you figures on how much it's going to cost and how much ridership is, okay?
Yeah.
And I've got a study here from 2007 done from a guy out of Denmark.
Go for it.
And he studied 44 urban rail projects. There's not a lot of them out there, naturally, okay? But this is the biggest study to date. And out of it, he found the average cost overrun for urban rail is 45%. 25% of those projects, the cost overrun was 60%. And on the ridership, the average ridership is 51% lower than forecast. And for 25% of them, ridership is at least 68% lower than forecast.
Yeah.
So it's a rosy scenario
That's
that
right.
they paint for you.
Well, how many times do they also say here's our estimated cost, and then it's 200 to 300% that, or 2 or 3 times that cost by the time it's all said and done. Now the federal government's going to help fund this possibly. That we've got to take it from there with this as well, right?
They have no money.
Yes, that's right. That's right. Barb?
Well, I was just going to say that that's what actually was the point I was going to make, is that in Charlotte they talk here locally so
Yes.
much because Mr. Miller came from the Charlotte Rail, and so naturally the discussion about the success of the Charlotte Ride or the Charlotte Rail system is constant. And the truth is that it's only a 9-mile rail system. And Charlotte built this rail in 1997. They passed their sales tax referendum, which is
Okay.
what they're going to try to get us to pass.
Right.
It opened in 2008, I believe it is. So it's only been open like about 6 years. Just last month, and I tell the listeners, go to Google search Charlotte Rail, and you will find stories. Just came out in May. They need $5 billion to
Already.
go on.
Wow.
They already need $5 billion. So the Charlotte loss per trip right now is $20.14 according to Cato Institute.
Wow. And they have 27 riders per car in that situation. We're not even close to that.
Right. You can see that Dallas is $18.
Wow.
This is loss. So if you have a family of 4 that want to go to the ball, it's going to cost us $80
Yes.
for a family of 4 to
And that's
take.
one way, one
Exactly,
trip.
that's one way.
Yeah, they got to get home too. Well, it's that way. Like you said about Rubio, he goes out with a horse, he comes back and he walks. We may have to walk home because the bus won't be there to pick
Well,
us up.
look at the cities like Stockton, California, and this is one of the things that we've been trying to say, is that these people are not qualified to project 10, 20 years
Yes.
down the road
Yes.
with this kind of a project,
Right.
they're putting us in great financial risk.
The reason it's happening is because the corporations, the big boys, the corporations in the area want to profit from this, and some of the legislators as well. And Lab Valley has a son who's involved in some of this stuff as well. So they want to give them the contracts, etc. We're talking about a cost to build and operate a light rail system up to $10 billion over 25 years. And it requires even more tax increases. Who knows what they would want after the 7 to 8%. It's easy to say, hey, let's go to 10. Let's just skip 9 in the process. You can learn more about this once again at railtaxfacts.com. Pete?
Those points you made are great, Glenn. In terms of research for Pinellas County on rail, I mean, Barb has been a superwoman on it. I've gone to quite a few meetings, but Barb is like tireless. So I really acknowledge Barb for doing what she's doing. At a national level, one of the heroes that I have with respect to analyzing rail is Randall O'Toole. He's with the
Yes.
Cato Institute, and he's done phenomenal work. It's a good source to kind of get to the bottom line. He's really supported debates on just all the facts and figures that you brought, Glenn, and he's been really a champion on bringing out the truth about, especially in the cost of light rail.
We've got two simple answers and solutions for today's two topics: amnesty, immigration bill, and the light rail. Say no.
Stop.
Stop and say no.
That's right.
All right, and that you can learn more about the amnesty bills as well. You can learn more about the light rail as well as we've given you the websites. We've enjoyed being here with the South Pinellas 912. Barb has been on the phone with us before when you only had only 5 or 7 minutes to share what's happening here in the Pinellas County and when we did all those other counties together. But we're grateful that we can be here together with all of you and all of you participating. You all work so well. Tell us a little bit about, we got a couple of minutes, tell us a little bit about South Pinellas 912 and encourage people to come to your meetings.
Oh, thank you. Well, actually, we're going to have we have our meetings the last Sunday of the month at the
Okay.
Pinellas Park Library, 2 o'clock on Sunday afternoon. And it's just the greatest group of American-loving people that just have nothing to gain other than freedom, and just trying to fight back against what we see as the crumbling
Yes,
of this country. And we are the remnant, Glenn.
that's right.
We are the remnant, and if we don't, all of us who believe in the country, if we don't come together and try to hang on to what made this country great and the founding fathers' dreams, we're going to lose. We're going to lose this country.
We come back to Thomas Jefferson, the quote I gave at the beginning, Barb. When wrongs are pressed because it is believed they will be borne, the wrongs of an amnesty bill, the wrongs of a light rail that is nonsensical and uneconomical. When wrongs are pressed because it is believed they will be borne, resistance becomes morality. We are the resistance. The Tea Party is the resistance. The conservative, the constitutional conservatives are, and I always have to put a word in front of conservative because it's being maligned and misused by everybody else. The constitutional conservatives. And you can join South Pinellas 912. I advocate them very well. They've got an excellent crew of intelligent and well-weathered and experienced and veteran Tea Party protesters in this way to bring out the morality. And we appreciate your leadership too, Barb, in the process as well. That's South Pinellas 912. Give us the website one more time.
It's 912pinellas.org, and we really appreciate you, Glenn, allowing us to come on today
Yes,
and
thanks a bunch.
having a
Thanks very
great
much, Glenn.
conversation about important issues. Thank
All
you
right.
so much.
Well, great. And folks, to learn more, go to their website, and we encourage you to participate. If you're not participating in a Tea Party group right now, in a constitutional conservative group, you're part of the problem, not part of the solution. And good listeners, I want you to be a part of the solution with us. It's not going to be an easy fight, but you know what? We only had 20% in the 1770 wars that fought for the revolution. 20% of the folks, and we won that war against the greatest Navy and Army in the world at that time.
That's right.
We can do it by God's grace, by God's design, by God's help along the way. Well, folks, I appreciate them being here. Keep writing the right, all of you. God bless you.